Listen, pause for a moment. Not casually, not distracted. Truly pause. Because something in your spirit already knows this isn't just another message passing through your screen. This is not random. This is not coincidence. This is not something you just happened to click on. No, this is a divine interruption. There was something you were doing just moments ago, wasn't there? Maybe scrolling without thinking. Maybe trying to distract yourself from something you couldn't quite explain. Maybe carrying a quiet weight in your chest that no one else seems to notice. And then suddenly, this appeared. This message. These words. This moment. That is not an accident. Because heaven does not interrupt without intention. There are moments, rare moments, when the noise of the world is pushed aside just enough for something greater to break through. And this is one of those moments. You were not just scrolling, you were being guided. You were not just searching, you were being positioned. You were not just existing, you were being summoned. And yes, summoned is the right word. Because Archangel Michael does not speak into casual moments. He does not step forward unless something significant has already shifted in the unseen. And what you are about to understand is this. Something has already been decided about you and you haven't fully seen it yet. You may have felt it though. That strange tension you couldn't explain. That pressure that seemed to rise out of nowhere. That feeling like something is happening behind the scenes, but you can't quite see it. One moment you feel strong, clear, grounded, and the next, something tries to pull you back into doubt, confusion, or exhaustion. You've been asking yourself, why does it feel like something is pushing against me right now? And here is the truth that is about to change everything for you. It's not because you are losing. It's because something already lost, and it refuses to accept it. Let that sink in. The pressure you feel is not proof of defeat, it is proof of resistance. Resistance from something that knows its time is up. Resistance from something that sees what's coming for you before you even recognize it yourself. And that is why this message found you now. Not yesterday. Not next week. Not when it's convenient. But right now, because timing and the spirit is everything. There is a window open in this very moment. A moment where clarity can break through confusion. A moment where truth can silence the noise that has been surrounding you. You were meant to hear this before something else reaches you. Before a conversation. Before a distraction. Before a thought tries to settle in your mind and twist your perception. Heaven needed to reach you first. Because once you understand what is really happening, everything changes. Think about it. Have you noticed how certain things lately just don't feel the same anymore? Situations that once had power over you now feel weaker yet somehow louder. People who once influenced your emotions now seem more distant yet more reactive. It's like something is trying harder, even though it's already losing its grip. That's not your imagination. That's exposure. That's the unraveling. That's what happens when something knows it has already been defeated, but refuses to step down quietly. And right now, you are standing in the middle of that moment. A moment where the unseen is beginning to spill into the seen. A moment where what was hidden is starting to lose its cover. A moment where the truth is rising, and it's rising fast. But here's what you must understand before anything else. This message is not here to scare you. It's here to wake you. Because if you don't recognize what's already been decided in your favor, you might misinterpret what's happening around you. You might think the pressure means danger. You might think the tension means something is wrong. You might even think you need to fight harder. But no, that's not what this is. This is a revelation moment. A moment where heaven is leaning close, not to warn you of defeat, but to remind you of victory. And Archangel Michael's presence right now carries one message above all. You are not stepping into a battle. You are standing in the aftermath of one that has already been won. The only question is, will you see it that way? Because everything that follows from this moment depends on that awareness. Everything. So stay with me. Don't let your attention drift. Don't let your mind wander. Because what comes next will reveal something even deeper. Something that will completely shift how you see the pressure, the people, and the patterns around you. You are not where you think you are. And what you're about to uncover will prove it. Type ISEIT now in the comments if you feel this message stirring something in your spirit. Blessing code 1717 is now activating around your awareness. There is something you must understand right now, something that will shift the way you interpret everything happening around you. What you are feeling, what you are facing, what seems to be unfolding in front of you, it is not an undecided battle. It is not a fight hanging in the balance. It is not something that could go either way depending on how strong you are or how much you endure. No, this war has already been decided. Long before you felt the pressure. Long before the confusion tried to settle in your mind. Long before the tension started building around your life. There was a moment in the unseen realm where the outcome was already sealed. A moment where heaven looked at everything connected to your name, your path, your future, and declared the final verdict. Victory. Not partial victory. Not delayed victory. Not conditional victory. Complete victory. And yet here you are, still feeling resistance. Still sensing opposition. Still wondering why it feels like something is pushing back against you so strongly. This is where most people misunderstand what is happening. Because what you are experiencing is not a fight for victory. It is the echo of a fight that has already been lost by the other side. You see, in the spiritual realm, things do not always manifest at the same speed as they are decided. There is a gap, a space between what is declared in heaven and what is revealed on earth. And in that space, something very specific happens. Something that explains everything you've been feeling. The defeated still try to act as if they have authority. The enemy does not step back quietly. The enemy does not announce defeat and walk away with dignity. No, when pride is involved, defeat becomes something it refuses to accept. And instead of surrendering, it performs. It resists. It creates noise. It applies pressure. Not because it has power, but because it is trying to maintain the illusion of power. That is the stage you are standing in right now. A stage where the outcome is already written, but the performance is still playing out. And that performance can feel real if you don't know what you're looking at. That's why the pressure feels convincing. That's why the resistance feels intense. That's why certain situations seem to rise up at the exact moment you start moving forward. It's not because you are being pushed backward. It's because something is reacting to the fact that it can no longer hold you where you used to be. Think about it carefully. Why would opposition increase when you begin to shift? Why would tension rise when clarity starts forming in your mind? Why would distraction suddenly multiply when you begin to step into alignment? Because something already knows it has lost access to you. And instead of accepting that loss, it tries one last strategy. It tries to convince you that the battle is still ongoing. It tries to pull you back into a mindset where you feel like you need to fight, struggle, prove, defend. He wants you to believe that you are still in danger, still uncertain, still vulnerable. Because if you believe that, then you step out of your position. And that position is everything. Because you were never meant to fight for victory. You were meant to stand from victory. There is a difference, and it is a powerful one. Fighting for victory drains you. It exhausts you. It keeps you in a cycle of reacting, defending, pushing, striving. But standing from victory changes everything. It grounds you. It stabilizes you. It gives you clarity. It removes urgency and replaces it with authority. And right now, Archangel Michael is revealing this truth to you for a reason. Because if you misinterpret this moment, you will respond incorrectly. You will think the pressure means you need to push harder. You will think the resistance means something is wrong. You will think the tension means you are losing ground. But the truth is the exact opposite. The pressure is proof that something already broke in your favor. The resistance is evidence that something already shifted beyond reversal. The tension is confirmation that something has already been removed from its position over you. You are not being surrounded by power. You are being surrounded by reaction. Reaction from something that is watching its influence fade. Reaction from something that realizes you are no longer where it thought you would remain. Reaction from something that cannot stop what has already been set in motion for you. This is why this moment is so critical. Because awareness changes everything. Once you understand that the war has already been decided, you stop responding the same way. You stop feeding into the illusion. You stop reacting emotionally to every movement, every word, every shift around you. You begin to see it differently. You begin to stand differently. You begin to move with a calm that doesn't come from ignorance, but from knowing. And knowing that what you are facing is not a threat. It is a delay in manifestation. Knowing that what you are experiencing is not danger. It is the final resistance before release. And knowing that what you feel right now is not uncertainty. It is the transition between what has already been secured and what is about to become visible. Stay anchored in that. Because what comes next will reveal why the enemy refuses to admit defeat and how that pride is the very thing exposing its end. Type "I stand in victory" in the comments if you are receiving this truth. Blessing code 2222 is now sealing your position in the spirit. And now listen carefully, because this is where your perception must sharpen. What you have been seeing, what you have been feeling, what has been trying to present itself as strength against you is not power. It is performance. It is the illusion of power trying to hold its form even as it collapses beneath the surface. And if you don't recognize the difference, you may respond to something that has already lost its authority over you. There is a reason why things feel louder right now. A reason why certain people seem more reactive, more emotional, more unpredictable. A reason why situations that once stayed quiet are suddenly rising to the surface. It is not random. It is not coincidence. It is not a new problem being created. It is exposure. It is unraveling. It is the sound of something breaking apart that can no longer sustain itself. Because when the enemy loses a fight it cannot win, it does not disappear immediately. It performs. It exaggerates. It amplifies. It creates noise, hoping that the noise will distract you from the truth. And the truth is simple, but powerful. It has already lost. But pride does not accept loss easily. Pride convinces the defeated to keep showing up as if they are still in control. Pride pushes the enemy to continue speaking, continue influencing, continue pressing, even when the authority behind those actions has already been stripped away. And that is why what you are witnessing feels so intense. Because what you are seeing is not strength, it is desperation disguised as strength. Look at it closely. The patterns are clear. The louder it gets, the weaker it actually is. The more aggressive it becomes, the closer it is to collapse. The more it tries to provoke you, the less control it truly has. This is the illusion. It wants you to believe that the situation is escalating in power, when in reality, it is collapsing in structure. It wants you to think you are under threat, when in reality, you are watching something lose its grip. And the only way it can maintain that grip a little longer is if you react as though it still has authority. That is the strategy, to pull you into reaction. Because reaction reconnects you to what has already been disconnected. Think about the moments when you feel triggered. When something is said, something is done, something shifts, and suddenly, your peace is disturbed. Your mind starts racing. Your emotions start rising. That is not random. That is targeted. Not because you are weak, but because that is the only access point left. If it can get you to react, it can get you to re-engage. If it can get you to re-engage, it can prolong the illusion. But only for a moment. Because even then it still cannot change the outcome. This is why Archangel Michael is bringing this awareness to you now. Because you are not meant to fight this. You are meant to see through it. You are meant to recognize it for what it is, a fading echo of something that no longer has the authority it once carried. And when you see it clearly, your posture changes. You stop reacting to every movement. You stop interpreting every shift as danger. You stop giving energy to what is already dissolving. Instead, you observe. You discern. You remain still in your position. Because here is the deeper truth you must hold on to. Illusion requires participation to survive. Without your attention, it weakens. Without your reaction, it fades. Without your belief, it collapses faster. That is why this moment matters so much. Because the enemy is not trying to defeat you anymore. It is trying to convince you that it still can. And if you believe that, then the illusion continues. But if you don't, everything changes. You begin to see that what once intimidated you now looks different. What once felt overwhelming now feels predictable. What once carried weight now feels hollow. And that shift in perception is not small. It is everything. Because once illusion is recognized, it can no longer control the narrative. This is the turning point, where you stop interpreting noise as power, where you stop interpreting pressure as authority, where you stop interpreting resistance as dominance, and you begin to see it for what it truly is, a collapsing structure making its final sounds before it falls completely. So do not be moved by what appears loud. Do not be shaken by what appears aggressive. Do not be distracted by what appears urgent. Because what you are witnessing is not a rise. It is a fall in progress. And the more still you remain, the faster it finishes collapsing. Type ISE through the illusion in the comments if this truth is settling into your spirit. Blessing code 3333 is now activating clarity and discernment around you. And as this truth settles into you, understand this: just as illusion loses power when light is revealed, there are countless others still walking in confusion, still trapped in silence, still waiting for a moment like this to reach them. This message is not just for you. It is meant to move through you. Scripture says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." And right now, that light is being extended through every message shared, every word spoken, every soul reached. If something within you is saying, "I want to help others see what I now see," then this is your moment to act. Your support through Super Thanks or PayPal is not just giving. It is sowing into awakening, into clarity, into breakthrough for someone who may be on the edge of giving up. The links are placed in every video description, and even in the QR code on your screen, because the opportunity to participate is not accidental. It is aligned. Do not hesitate when the Spirit nudges you. Step into it. Sow into it. and watch how what you release returns to you multiplied in ways only heaven can orchestrate. There is a question that has been sitting quietly in your spirit, even as you begin to understand that the battle is already won. If victory has already been declared, then why does it still feel like this? Why does the pressure still linger? Why do certain moments still feel heavy, tense, or uncertain, as if something is still trying to push against you? This is where many people lose clarity, because they expect victory to feel immediate, visible, and undeniable. They expect everything to suddenly become calm, peaceful, and effortless the moment the outcome is secured. But that is not how it works. There is a process, a transition, a movement between what has already been decided and what has not yet fully manifested. And that space is where you are standing right now. You are standing between declaration and demonstration. Heaven has already spoken. The decision has already been made. The authority has already shifted. But the physical, emotional, and environmental reality around you is still catching up to that truth. And during that time, you may still feel pressure, not because you are losing, but because everything is adjusting to a new order that has already been established. Think of it this way. When something powerful shifts beneath the surface, the ground above it does not instantly settle. There is movement. There is tension. There is a period where things realign, where structures adjust, where what once held firm begins to loosen and reposition itself. And that process can feel uncomfortable if you don't understand what is happening. The pressure you feel is not a sign of danger. It is a sign of transition. It is the feeling of something that used to have influence over you losing its hold, while your environment has not fully caught up to that loss yet. It is the sensation of standing in a space where the old is no longer stable, but the new has not yet fully revealed itself. And in that in-between moment, everything can feel uncertain, even though the outcome is already secure. This is why the pressure can feel so confusing, because it mimics what defeat used to feel like. It carries a similar weight, a similar tension, a similar urgency. But the source is completely different. Before, pressure came from being under something. And now, pressure comes from something being removed. Before, it was oppression. Now, it is release. And if you don't recognize that difference, you might respond to this moment the wrong way. You might try to escape it, resist it, or interpret it as a setback. But this is not something to run from. This is something to understand. Because this pressure is temporary. It cannot sustain itself. It exists only because the shift has already happened. You are feeling the after effect of something breaking, something shifting, something moving out of place. And just like anything that breaks or moves, there is a moment where the pieces have not yet fully settled. That moment can feel unstable, but it is not permanent. It is passing. And this is where your awareness becomes your greatest strength. Because if you remain grounded in what has already been declared, you will not be shaken by what you temporarily feel. You will not misinterpret the pressure as failure. You will not allow the tension to pull you back into old patterns of thinking or reacting. Instead, you will recognize it. You will say, "This is not against me. This is adjustment around me." And that understanding changes your posture completely. You stop trying to control every feeling. You stop questioning every shift. You stop reacting to every moment of discomfort. And you begin to stand still within it. Because you know something deeper. You know that this pressure is not here to defeat you. It is here to pass through. You know that this tension is not here to stay. It is here to dissolve. And most importantly, You know that what you are feeling does not define what has already been decided. That is the truth you must anchor yourself in. Because the moment you forget that, the pressure begins to feel heavier than it actually is. It begins to take on meaning it does not have. It begins to influence your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions. But when you remember, when you stay rooted in the awareness that victory has already been secured, everything changes. The pressure loses its voice. The tension loses its power. The uncertainty loses its hold. And you begin to move differently. Not with urgency, but with steadiness. Not with fear, but with understanding. Not with reaction, but with quiet authority. This is the shift that is happening within you right now. A shift from reacting to what you feel to recognizing what is actually true. So do not be discouraged by the pressure. Do not be confused by the tension. Do not be moved by the temporary discomfort. Because all of it is part of the transition. All of it is part of the adjustment. All of it is part of the movement from what has already been decided into what is about to become visible in your life. Stay steady in this moment. Because what you feel now is not the end. It is the passing of what no longer belongs. Type I remain steady in the comments if you are standing firm in this truth. Blessing code 4444 is now anchoring your spirit in peace and stability. Now you must understand something even deeper, because what you are witnessing right now is not just resistance, it is pride in its final stage. And pride, when it is confronted with defeat, does not surrender quietly. It does not step aside with humility. It does not acknowledge truth, even when truth is undeniable. Instead, it clings, it resists, it exaggerates, and it fights harder, not because it still has a chance to win, but because it refuses to accept that it has already lost. This is the force you are feeling around you. It is not strategy anymore. It is not power anymore. It is pride refusing to bow. And pride, when it is exposed, becomes louder, more aggressive, and more desperate than ever before. It will push harder than it did at the beginning. It will create more tension than it did when it had real influence. It will attempt to provoke stronger reactions, hoping that if it can create enough noise, enough confusion, enough emotional instability, it can still convince you that it remains in control. But it does not. That is the truth you must hold on to, no matter how convincing the moment may feel. Because pride operates on one key principle: it needs acknowledgement to survive. It needs you to recognize it as authority. It needs you to respond to it as if it still has power over you. And the moment you do that, even slightly, it finds a way to extend its presence just a little longer. That is why this stage is so intense. Because this is the final attempt. This is the moment where pride knows it cannot win, but it also refuses to step down. And so it fights, not for victory, but for attention. Not for control, but for action. Not for authority, but for recognition. And if you are not aware of this, you might misinterpret what is happening. You might think, why is this getting worse? You might wonder, why is there more tension now than before? You might question, if things are already decided, why does it feel like this is escalating? But what you are actually witnessing is not escalation in power. It is escalation in resistance. It is the final surge of something that is being forced out of position. And that surge can feel overwhelming if you don't understand its source. But once you see it clearly, something shifts within you. You stop taking it personally. You stop interpreting it as a threat. You stop reacting to it as if it still holds authority. Instead, you begin to recognize the pattern. You begin to see that every time you move forward, something tries to provoke you. Every time you gain clarity, something tries to confuse you. Every time you find peace, something tries to disturb it. And once you see that pattern, you understand what it really is. It is pride attempting to pull you back into a place you have already outgrown. But here is where your power lies. You are not required to engage. You are not required to respond. You are not required to prove anything, defend anything, or fight anything that has already been settled in your favor. Because the moment you engage with pride on its level, you lower your position. You step out of authority and into reaction. And that is exactly what it is trying to accomplish. But you are not who you used to be. You are not in the same position you were before. You are not standing in uncertainty anymore. You are standing in awareness. And awareness changes everything. Because now, when the noise rises, you recognize it. When the pressure increases, you understand it. When the tension builds, you see through it. And instead of reacting, you remain still. You remain grounded. You remain anchored in what you already know to be true. That the outcome has not changed. That the decision has not been reversed. That what was declared over your life is still standing, regardless of what tries to oppose it in the moment. This is the difference between someone who is still fighting for victory and someone who knows they are already standing in it. One reacts. The other observes. One engages. The other remains steady. One is pulled into the noise. The other lets the noise pass. And right now, you are being called into that higher position. A position where you are no longer influenced by pride. No longer provoked by resistance, no longer shaken by what appears intense on the surface, because you see it for what it truly is, the final attempt of something that refuses to admit it has already lost. So let it make noise. Let it resist. Let it try to provoke, because none of it changes the truth. None of it alters the outcome. None of it has the authority it is pretending to have. And the more you remain still, the faster it exhausts itself. The faster it fades. The faster it disappears completely. Stay in that position. Because what comes next will reveal how to recognize the signs that you are standing in a battle already won, and why those signs are appearing so clearly in your life right now. Type "I do not engage with pride" in the comments if you are standing firm in this truth. Blessing code 5555 is now strengthening your authority and stillness. There are signs, clear, undeniable signs, that reveal when you are no longer fighting for victory, but standing in one that has already been secured. And yet, many overlook these signs because they do not appear the way people expect them to. They are not always wrapped in peace or immediate clarity. They do not always arrive as calm, effortless moments. In fact, more often than not, they appear in ways that feel contradictory at first. They show up as tension, as resistance, as unexpected shifts that seem confusing until you begin to see them through the right lens. And this is where your awareness must sharpen even further. Because the signs of a battle already won are not found in the absence of opposition. They are found in the nature of the opposition itself. Pay attention to what has been happening around you. Notice how certain things that once operated quietly are no longer able to stay hidden. Notice how patterns that used to repeat without interruption are now being disrupted, exposed, or broken apart. Notice how people, situations, or environments that once felt stable are suddenly shifting, reacting, or revealing sides you had not seen before. That is not coincidence. That is exposure. And exposure only happens when something no longer has the authority to remain concealed. You are witnessing the unraveling of what once operated without resistance. You are seeing the breakdown of structures that used to hold influence over your life. And even though it may feel uncomfortable, even though it may feel chaotic at times, it is actually one of the clearest signs that something has already shifted in your favor. Because when a battle is still undecided, everything remains controlled. Everything remains calculated. Everything remains hidden beneath the surface, operating in ways you cannot easily detect. But when a battle has already been decided, the control begins to slip. The calculation begins to fail. The hidden begins to surface. And that is exactly what you are seeing now. Another sign is the increase in resistance at the exact moment you begin to move forward. Think about it. The moment you start gaining clarity, something tries to confuse you. The moment you begin to feel peace, something tries to disturb it. The moment you take a step forward, something attempts to pull your attention backward. This pattern is not random. It is reaction. It is the response of something that can no longer stop your movement, but is still trying to slow it down. And the intensity of that reaction is not a reflection of its strength. It is a reflection of its desperation. Because if it still had power over you, it would not need to react. If it still had control, it would not need to provoke. If it still had authority, it would not need to create distractions. The fact that it is doing these things is confirmation that something has already changed. You are no longer under it. You are no longer bound to it. You are no longer in the same position you once were. And because of that, it is responding. Another sign you must recognize is the shift within you. The way you respond to things is changing. The way you perceive situations is evolving. What once triggered you deeply now feels different. Maybe not completely gone, but weaker, less convincing, less capable of pulling you into the same reaction. There is a growing awareness inside you, a sense that something is not what it appears to be, even when you cannot fully explain it. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. That is your spirit recognizing the truth before your mind fully processes it. And that internal shift is one of the most powerful confirmations you can receive. Because it shows that the change is not just happening around you, it is happening within you. And when that happens, it becomes impossible for you to return to the same level of influence you once experienced. You may still feel moments of tension. You may still encounter situations that try to pull you back. But something inside you will not respond the same way anymore. Something inside you will pause, observe, and recognize. And that recognition is your protection. Because it keeps you from re-entering what has already been broken away from you. Here is also a sign in the timing of things. Things may feel delayed, but at the same time, they are aligning in ways you did not expect. Doors that once seemed closed begin to show signs of opening. Opportunities begin to surface in subtle ways. Connections begin to shift, sometimes unexpectedly, sometimes even uncomfortably. This is not stagnation. This is repositioning. This is the movement of everything around you adjusting to the reality that has already been established in the unseen. And yes, it may feel unfamiliar. It may feel uncertain. But that does not mean it is wrong. It means it is new. It means you are stepping into something that no longer operates under the same conditions as before. And that is exactly what happens when a battle has already been won. Everything begins to change, not all at once, not always in ways that feel easy, but in ways that are undeniable once you step back and observe them clearly. So do not overlook these signs. Do not misinterpret them as problems. Do not allow the discomfort to convince you that something is wrong. Because what you are seeing is confirmation. Confirmation that the shift has already happened. Confirmation that the outcome has already been secured. Confirmation that you are no longer where you used to be. And the more you recognize these signs, the more grounded you become in your position. The more stable you become in your awareness. The more unshaken you become in the face of what is still trying to react around you. Because now you know. You are not fighting for victory. You are standing in the evidence of it. Type "I recognize" the signs in the comments if you see this truth unfolding in your life. Blessing code 6666 is now activating discernment and confirmation in your path. There is something you must fully understand in this moment, because if you miss this, you may continue to feel vulnerable in a place where you are actually covered. You may continue to feel exposed in a moment where you are being guarded more intensely than you realize. And that misunderstanding can create unnecessary fear, unnecessary hesitation, and unnecessary doubt. But hear this clearly now. You are not exposed. You have not been left unprotected. You are not navigating this moment alone. Because as all of this unfolds, this resistance, this exposure, this unraveling, there is something else happening at the same time, something you cannot always see, but you can begin to sense if you become still enough. There is a shield around you, not symbolic, not distant, not passive, active, present, intentional. Archangel Michael does not stand at a distance observing your situation. He stands within it, around it, above it, positioned with precision, not just to watch what is happening, but to ensure that what has already been decided is not overturned by what is trying to react. And that changes everything. Because once you realize that you are shielded, you stop interpreting every movement as a threat. You stop feeling like you have to defend yourself at every turn. You stop reacting as though you are vulnerable to what is happening around you. Instead, you begin to move differently, with awareness, with steadiness, with trust in something greater than what you can see. Because the truth is, the very fact that you are seeing these things, these patterns, these reactions, these exposures, is evidence of protection, not absence of it. If you were unprotected, you would not see clearly. If you were unguarded, you would not discern what is happening. If you were exposed, you would be overwhelmed, not aware. But you are aware. And awareness is one of the first layers of protection, because it keeps you from stepping into what you no longer belong to. It keeps you from engaging with what has already been removed from its place over you. It keeps you aligned with what has already been secured in your favor. And this is where you must shift your perspective. Because protection does not always look like silence. It does not always look like everything being calm and undisturbed. Sometimes, protection looks like exposure. Sometimes, it looks like things being revealed before they can affect you. Sometimes, it looks like discomfort that alerts you before you step into something that is no longer aligned with your path. That is not vulnerability. That is intervention. That is the shield working exactly as it should. Because the purpose of a shield is not just to block what is coming. It is to position you so that what is coming cannot reach you in the way it intends to. And that positioning is happening right now. Even in the moments where you feel uncertain. Even in the moments where you feel the pressure. Even in the moments where things seem unclear. There is a level of protection around you that is preventing what could have happened from happening. You may not see every detail of it. You may not understand every moment of it. But you are experiencing the result of it. Because think about this. How many things have you been pulled away from without fully understanding why? How many situations have shifted before they could fully unfold? How many times have you felt something was off, and later realized that feeling protected you from something deeper? That is not coincidence. That is covering. That is the shield in operation. And right now, that shield is stronger than ever. Because the moment you step into awareness, the moment you begin to recognize what is actually happening, the level of protection around you increases, not because it was absent before, but because you are now aligned with it. You are no longer moving blindly. You are no longer engaging without discernment. You are no longer unaware of the dynamics around you. And that alignment strengthens your position. It strengthens your stability. It strengthens your ability to remain unshaken in moments that would have once pulled you out of balance. So when you feel the pressure, remember this. It is not reaching you in the way it intends to. When you see the reaction, remember this. It is not affecting you in the way it once could. When you notice the tension, remember this. It is not surrounding you. It is being kept at a distance. You are not in the middle of danger. You are in the middle of protection. And the more you recognize that, the more your posture shifts. You stop bracing for impact. You stop expecting harm. You stop anticipating failure. And you begin to stand with a quiet confidence that does not come from what you see, but from what you know. That you are covered. That you are shielded. That you are not alone in this moment. And that what has already been decided in your favor is being guarded with precision. Stay in that awareness. Because what comes next will reveal why reacting too soon can disrupt what has already been secured, and why your stillness right now is more powerful than any action you could take. Type "I am covered" in the comments if you are standing in this protection. Blessing code 7777 is now surrounding you with divine shielding and peace. There is a subtle but critical moment that happens in every transition like the one you are in right now. A moment that determines whether you move forward at alignment or whether you unknowingly step back into something that has already been removed from your life. And that moment is not always obvious. It does not always come with a clear warning. It comes quietly, disguised as urgency, disguised as emotion, disguised as the need to respond right now. This is the trap of reacting too soon. Because when everything around you begins to shift, when exposure increases, when resistance rises, when people or situations start behaving differently, there is a natural pull to respond, to say something, to correct something, to defend yourself, to step in and take action before things seem to spiral further. And on the surface, that feels justified. It feels necessary. It feels like the right thing to do. But this is where you must pause. Because not every moment that demands a reaction deserves one. And not every situation that feels urgent is meant to be handled immediately. In fact, some of the most critical moments in your life are the ones where your power is not found in what you do but in what you choose not to do. Right now, you are in a position of authority. Not the kind of authority that needs to prove itself. Not the kind that needs to argue, explain, or defend. But the kind that remains still because it already knows the outcome. And the moment you react too quickly, you risk stepping out of that position. You risk engaging with something on a level that no longer has access to you. You risk giving attention, energy, and focus to something that is already losing its influence. This is why the pull to react feels so strong. Because it is the only way that influence can be extended. If it can get you to respond emotionally, it can draw you back into the dynamic. If it can get you to explain yourself, it can reopen conversations that were already closing. If it can get you to defend your position, it can shift your focus away from what has already been secured for you. But here is the truth you must hold on to. You do not need to prove what has already been established. You do not need to defend what has already been decided. You do not need to rush into action when the outcome is already in your favor. And that is where your strength lies. In restraint, in stillness, in the ability to recognize when silence carries more power than words. Because silence, in the right moment, is not weakness, it is authority. It is the refusal to engage with what no longer deserves your attention. It is the decision to remain aligned with what is already true, instead of being pulled into what is temporarily reacting around you. And this is not always easy, because everything in your natural instinct may tell you to respond, to correct the misunderstanding, to address the tension, to resolve the situation immediately. But not every situation is meant to be resolved through action. Some are meant to resolve themselves as you remain in position. Some are meant to unfold without your interference, because your interference would only complicate what is already being handled at a higher level. This is where trust becomes essential. Trust in what has already been declared. Trust in the protection that surrounds you. Trust in the fact that what is unfolding is not out of control, it is coming into alignment. Because when you trust that, you begin to move differently. You begin to pause before reacting. You begin to observe before engaging. You begin to discern before speaking. And in that space, clarity increases. You start to see what truly requires your attention and what is simply trying to pull you back into something you have already outgrown. You begin to recognize that some conversations do not need your response. Some situations do not need your involvement. Some moments do not need your reaction. They need your stillness. They need your awareness. They need your refusal to step out of the position you have already been placed in. Because that position is where your authority remains intact. And once you understand that, the urgency begins to fade. The pressure to respond begins to lose its grip. The need to act immediately begins to dissolve. And you begin to stand in a different kind of power. A power that is not reactive but rooted. A power that is not rushed but steady. A power that is not driven by emotion but by awareness. This is where you are being called to stand right now. Not in reaction, not in urgency, but in authority. Because everything that has already been decided in your favor does not require your interference to come to pass. It requires your alignment. And your alignment is maintained through stillness, through awareness, and through the wisdom to know and not to move. Stay there, because the next step will reveal why certain separations are happening in your life, and why they are not loss, but necessary alignment for what is coming next. Type "I remain in authority" in the comments if you are standing firm in this truth. Blessing code 8888 is now activating restraint and clarity within your spirit. And as you stand in this place of authority, recognize this: your stillness is not just preserving your path, it is creating space for others to find theirs. There are souls searching, waiting for clarity, longing for a word that will break the confusion they are trapped in. The scripture speaks, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days," and right now, what you release becomes a seed in someone else's awakening. If you feel that stirring within you, that quiet pull to help extend this message further, do not ignore it. This is not a casual moment. It is a prophetic opportunity to sow into transformation. Your support through PayPal, through Super Thanks, through the links in the description and the QR code before you, becomes a channel through which light continues to reach those still in darkness. Act on that prompting. Sow with intention. And watch how heaven multiplies what you release back into your life with divine precision. There is a shift happening in your life right now that may feel uncomfortable, even confusing at times. It may feel like distance where there used to be closeness. It may feel like disconnection where there used to be familiarity. It may feel like certain relationships, environments, or patterns are quietly slipping away from you without a clear explanation. And if you are not careful, you may interpret this as loss. You may interpret it as rejection. You may even question whether something has gone wrong. But you must see this clearly. This is not rejection. This is alignment. Because when something has already been decided in your favor, everything that no longer matches that decision must begin to shift. Everything that cannot go where you are being positioned must begin to separate from you. And that separation is not random. It is not accidental. It is precise. It is intentional. It is necessary. And yet, it does not always feel that way, because separation can feel personal. It can feel like you are being misunderstood. It can feel like you are being left behind or pushed aside. It can feel like something is being taken from you. But what you must understand is this: you are not losing what is meant for you. You are being released from what cannot remain with you. There is a difference. And that difference changes everything. Because when something is truly meant for your next level, it will align with it. It will move with it. You will not resist it. It will not create tension every time you step forward. It will not require you to shrink, to explain, or to compromise your clarity in order to maintain it. But when something is not aligned, it cannot sustain itself in your presence as you begin to shift. It will either fall away quietly, or it will react. It will create tension. It will try to pull you back. It will attempt to maintain the connection in the way it once existed. And when that happens, it can feel confusing, because part of you remembers what it used to be. Part of you remembers the comfort, the familiarity, the history, and that memory can make it difficult to accept the change. But this is where you must stay grounded in truth. You are not being called backward. You are being positioned forward. And forward movement always requires adjustment. It requires release. It requires space to be created for what is coming next. Because what is ahead of you cannot fully arrive if what is behind you is still occupying the space. This is why certain things are shifting now. Not because you did something wrong. Not because you are being rejected. But because you are being realigned. And realignment often feels like separation before it feels like clarity. It feels like distance before it feels like direction. It feels like loss before it reveals itself as preparation. But once you move through it, once you stop resisting it, once you stop interpreting it as something negative, you begin to see it differently. You begin to recognize that what is leaving was never meant to stay in this next phase. You begin to see that what is shifting is making room for something more aligned, more stable, more connected to where you are going. And that realization brings peace. Not immediate, overwhelming peace, but a steady, growing understanding that what is happening is not against you. It is for you. Because every separation that is happening right now is protecting your alignment. It is preventing you from carrying what no longer fits. It is removing what would create conflict in your next level. It is clearing the path so that what is meant for you can arrive without interference. And yes, there may still be moments where it feels uncomfortable. Moments where you question it. Moments where you feel the absence of what used to be. But do not let those moments pull you back into something that has already been released from your path. Because going back will not restore what was. It will only delay what is coming. And what is coming requires your full alignment, your full presence, your willingness to let go of what no longer belongs so that you can fully step into what does. This is not a moment to hold on tighter. This is a moment to trust deeper. To trust that what is being removed with purpose. To trust that what is being shifted with precision. To trust that what is unfolding is leading you exactly where you need to be. Because the truth is, you are not being left behind. You are being led forward. And everything that cannot walk with you in that direction must step aside. Not as punishment, not as rejection, but as alignment. So do not resist the separation. Do not misinterpret it. Do not allow it to create doubt in what has already been decided for you. Instead, stand in it. Allow it. Trust it. Because it is clearing the way for what is already on its way to you. Type "I trust the alignment" in the comments if you are standing firm in this truth. Blessing code 9999 is now guiding your path into divine alignment. Now you must be prepared for what comes next, because there is always a final phase in moments like this, a phase that can either pass over you quietly or pull you back into something you have already moved beyond. And this phase is not random. It is not unexpected. It is the last attempt of something that knows its time is ending, and that attempt will not come in the way you might expect. It will not appear as something obviously negative. It will not always look like resistance or confrontation. In fact, it will often appear familiar, comfortable, even convincing. Because when direct pressure no longer works, the strategy shifts, and the shift is subtle. Instead of pushing against you, it tries to pull you back into old thoughts, back into old conversations, back into old emotional patterns that once had influence over you. And this is where you must stay alert, because this stage is not about overpowering you. It is about persuading you. It is about creating moments where you begin to question what you already know. Moments where you feel the urge to revisit something you have already released. Moments where something or someone reappears in a way that feels almost natural, almost harmless, almost like it deserves your attention one more time. But this is not coincidence. This is timing, and not your timing, reaction timing. Because the moment something realizes it can no longer stop your forward movement, it looks for one final opportunity to slow you down. Not by force, but by familiarity. Think about how this might appear. A conversation that suddenly resurfaces after a period of silence. A situation that seems to reopen just when you thought it had closed. A thought pattern that returns, trying to convince you that things are not as clear as they seemed. A feeling that tries to reconnect you to something you had already moved away from. And in that moment, it can feel very real. It can feel like something you need to address. Something you need to resolve. Something you need to revisit before you can fully move forward. But this is where discernment becomes critical. Because not everything that returns is meant to be re-engaged. Some things return only to test whether you will step back into them. Some things reappear only to see if you will give them access again. Some things resurface not because they belong in your future, but because they are making one final attempt to remain connected to your present. And if you do not recognize that, you may find yourself pausing your forward movement to deal with something that no longer has a place in your path. That is the intention. Not to stop you completely, but to delay you, to distract you, to create just enough hesitation that you lose momentum. Because momentum matters. And once you are moving forward in alignment, anything that can interrupt that movement becomes a target. But here is where your awareness protects you. Because when you see this for what it is, you respond differently. You do not rush to engage. You do not immediately react. You do not assume that everything that appears requires your attention. Instead, you pause. You observe. You ask yourself, Is this aligned with where I am going, or is this trying to reconnect me to where I have been? And that question alone changes everything, because it shifts your focus from the surface to the intention behind what is happening. And once you see the intention, the illusion loses its strength. The pull weakens, the urgency fades, and you regain clarity. You realize that you do not need to revisit what has already been resolved. You do not need to respond to what is no longer relevant. You do not need to entertain what is only appearing to test your position, because your position is already established. Your path is already set, and what is ahead of you requires your full attention, not your divided focus. This is why this final attempt is so important to recognize, because it does not come with force. It comes with familiarity. It comes in a way that feels almost justified, almost necessary, almost deserving of your time. But the truth is, it is none of those things. It is simply the last movement of something that has already lost its place. And the way you move through this moment determines how quickly everything fully aligns. If you engage, it lingers. If you hesitate, it delays. But if you remain steady, if you recognize it, acknowledge it, and allow it to pass without stepping into it, then it fades quickly. Oublie, without leaving anything behind. This is where you are now, at the point where awareness must guide you more than instinct, where discernment must lead you more than emotion, where your understanding of what has already been decided must anchor you more than what is temporarily appearing. Stay in that awareness, because what comes next will reveal your role in this final stage, and why standing still now carries more power than anything you could try to force into motion. Type "I do not look back" in the comments if you are standing firm in this truth. Blessing code 1010 is now sealing your forward movement and clarity. There comes a moment in every spiritual transition where effort must give way to alignment, where striving must give way to standing, and where the need to do something must be replaced by the wisdom to remain still. And that moment is where you are right now, because everything you have been feeling, everything you have been witnessing, everything that has been shifting around you has brought you to this exact point, a point where your role is no longer to fight, no longer to prove, no longer to chase, but to stand. And standing is not passive. It is not weakness. It is not avoidance. It is one of the most powerful positions you can hold. Because standing means you are rooted. It means you are grounded in what has already been decided, not what is temporarily appearing. It means you are no longer being moved by every shift, every reaction, every moment of pressure that tries to pull your attention away from what is true. But this is where many people struggle, because standing requires trust. And trust feels unfamiliar when you have been conditioned to respond, to act, to fix, to engage every time something feels off. You may feel the urge to intervene, to step in and make sure everything unfolds correctly, to take control so that nothing slips out of place. But here is what you must understand. What has already been secured does not require your striving to be maintained. It requires your alignment. And alignment is not achieved through constant action. It is achieved through awareness, through stillness, through the ability to remain in position even when everything around you is moving. This is where your strength is being refined, not in how much you can do, but in how firmly you can stand without being pulled out of position. Because the truth is, the moment you begin to strive again, you step back into a space where you feel responsible for outcomes that have already been decided. You begin to carry weight that is not yours to carry. You begin to operate from urgency instead of authority. And that shift, even if it feels small, changes your posture completely. But when you stand, when you remain grounded in what you already know, you move differently. You stop chasing clarity because you already have it. You stop forcing outcomes because you trust they are unfolding. You stop reacting to every moment because you understand that not everything requires your involvement. And that is where peace begins to settle in. Not because everything around you is perfectly calm, but because you are no longer being moved by it. You are no longer measuring your position based on what you feel in the moment. You are no longer allowing temporary shifts to dictate your response. Instead, you are anchored, steady, and that stillness is not empty. It is active. It is filled with awareness, with discernment, with quiet confidence that does not need to be expressed outwardly to be real. Because you know something deeper. You know that what is unfolding does not depend on your effort. You know that what has been decided cannot be undone by what is temporarily reacting. You know that your role is not to force the outcome but to remain aligned with it. And this is where everything begins to settle into place. Because when you stop striving, you stop interfering. When you stop interfering, things begin to unfold more clearly. And when things unfold clearly, you begin to see just how much has already been handled without your involvement. That is when the realization deepens that you were never meant to carry this. You were never meant to fight this. You were never meant to hold everything together through effort alone. You were meant to stand, to remain in position, to trust what has already been established, and to allow everything else to adjust around that truth. This is not about doing less because you are unsure. This is about doing less because you are certain. Certain that your position is secure. Certain that your path is aligned. Certain that what is meant for you is already moving toward you, without the need for you to force it into place. And once you step into that certainty, everything changes. The urgency fades. The pressure loses its hold. The need to act immediately dissolves. And in its place, there is clarity. There is peace. There is a quiet strength that allows you to move when it is time to move and remain still when it is time to remain still. This is your role now. Not to strive, not to chase, not to react, but to stand, firm, grounded, unshaken. Because what is already yours does not require you to fight for it. It requires you to remain in position long enough for it to fully arrive. Stay there, because what comes next will reveal how everything that has been decided is about to manifest, and why what you are about to see will confirm everything you have just come to understand. Type "I stand firm" in the comments if you are rooted in this truth. Blessing code 1111 is now anchoring your spirit in unwavering alignment. Now you are standing at the threshold of something that cannot be reversed, something that cannot be undone, something that has already been sealed in the unseen and is now preparing to reveal itself in the seen. And this is the moment where everything begins to make sense, not all at once, not in a sudden overwhelming rush, but in a steady unfolding that confirms what your spirit has already begun to understand. Because when victory has already been declared and alignment has been established, manifestation becomes inevitable. Not forced, not rushed, not manipulated, but inevitable. And what you are about to witness in your life is not random change. It is not coincidence. It is not luck. It is the visible evidence of everything that has already been decided and protected in your favor. You will begin to notice it in subtle ways at first. A shift in how situations resolve themselves without your interference. A clarity that replaces confusion where there once was uncertainty. A sense of peace that remains even when circumstances are still adjusting around you. These are not small things. These are confirmations. Confirmations that what was once hidden is now taking form, that what was once delayed is now moving forward, that what was once resisted is now aligning. And as this continues, the changes will become more visible. What once felt blocked will begin to open. What once felt uncertain will begin to stabilize. What once felt distant will begin to draw closer. And you will realize something powerful in that moment. That nothing you experienced was wasted. That every moment of pressure, every moment of confusion, every moment where you felt like something was pushing against you was actually part of the transition. Part of the movement from where you were into where you are now standing. And this realization will not just change how you see the past. It will change how you move forward. Because you will no longer question every shift. You will no longer doubt every delay. You will no longer interpret every moment of discomfort as something negative. Instead, you will recognize the pattern. You will see that what feels like disruption is often preparation. That what feels like delay is often alignment. That what feels like pressure is often the final movement before release. And this awareness will allow you to move with a different kind of confidence. A confidence that does not come from controlling outcomes, but from understanding them. A confidence that does not come from forcing movement, but from recognizing when movement is already happening. And as you step into this phase, something else will become clear. The things that once tried to hold you back will no longer have the same presence. The noise will quiet. The reactions will fade. The urgency that once surrounded you will dissolve. Not because you fought harder, not because you proved something, but because you remained in position long enough for everything to settle into what it was always meant to become. This is the manifestation of victory. Not loud, not chaotic, but steady, certain, undeniable. And in this space, you will begin to see opportunities that align with where you are now. Connections that reflect your growth. Situations that no longer require you to compromise who you have become. And this is where your next chapter begins. Not built on what you had to struggle through, but built on what has already been secured for you. And as this unfolds, remember this truth. You did not arrive here by accident. You were positioned here, guided here, protected through every moment that led you to this point. And what is now unfolding is not something you have to chase. It is something you are stepping into. So remain steady, remain aware, remain aligned with what you now know to be true. Because everything you are about to experience is the confirmation of what has already been decided in your favor. And this time, you will not question it. You will recognize it. You will receive it. You will walk in it fully. Type "I receive the victory" in the comments if you are stepping into this new phase. Blessing code 1212 is now sealing your manifestation and forward movement. And as this victory begins to manifest in your life, understand this. What is unfolding through you is not meant to stop with you. Just as a river flows and nourishes everything in its path, this message carries the power to awaken others who are still standing in confusion, still trapped in battles that have already been won for them. The word declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." And right now, your act of giving becomes a prophetic extension of this very victory. If something within you is saying, "I want to be part of this movement. I want to help this reach someone who needs it," then do not delay. This is your moment to respond with intention. Through the PayPal links in the description and the QR code before you, you are not just supporting content. You are sowing into transformation, into awakening, into the breaking of chains in lives you may never see, but heaven fully records. Act now. Release your seed. and watch how what you give returns to you, multiplied as a living testimony of the very victory you have just received.